So coming back to the idea of sound design, it can mean many things to different people.
Yeah,
so what does it mean to you?
I guess you mean the role?
Yeah,
or
what the activities involved in it,
yeah.
and maybe aesthetically.
Yeah. It's well, I guess sound design is it can mean lots of different things. I mean, it was coined by Walter Murch while he was working on Apocalypse Now, because him and the director, they wanted to create a soundtrack which is use it as a creative tool, just like costume design or production design. So design, it's all thought out. So it's very it's a conceptual plan from the beginning.
So in which you told me earlier, at the moment you're editing speech, dialogue. That's one important aspect of it.
Yes.
Where everything else is constructed around it.
Exactly. Yeah.
What else?
So it's kind of I guess sound design for me, it's almost like the overall kind of idea for the sound for the film, and in that obviously you've got all the elements, like you've got dialogue, but it's the dialogue editing, which is the story more or less. It has to be loud and clear, and you can be creative with that, but then obviously building everything else around it. So you are rebuilding the sound for the film. You're adding what the kind of sometimes the camera kind of takes away when you shoot. So it's kind of creating a believable world, really. So yeah.
Do you also work as a supervising sound editor?
Yeah.
Basically, just listening and checking that everything is okay. Not hands-on, or is that
my role as when I supervise, it's very much hands-on, because that's where my passion lies. To actually, I usually, depending on the film, I usually pick films which are sonically interesting, films which are kind of sound-driven, where there is scope to actually, a kind of story and a script that lends itself to creative sound design, where you can actually have some fun. So and then when I supervise a film like that, I obviously look at the script, and then I liaise with the director to kind of find out what the essence of the story is, and how the director wants to tell that story. So it's a very, you do have in a way an incredibly intuitive relationship with the director, because sometimes it's very abstract. You can't put words on sound sometimes. So you just have to have that trust. And also obviously me as a role of being responsible also for the practicalities of delivering the soundtrack on time and on budget, and in the way that director wants it. And then I pick my team, you pick a team, and depends on the budget completely how many people.
What kind of team are you?
Well, it's the dialogue editor, there's sometimes sound effects editor, because even if I do hands-on, I'd like to be able to, obviously because I'm looking after, responsible for everything, it's a big job, because you have to look at sometimes the schedules and the budget, and liaise with the producer and director and the editor, as well as doing the editing. It's a big job. It's too much for one person. So that's where I sometimes have obviously employed a dialogue editor as well, and obviously Foley is crucial. So that's the Foley team. The going through attending that if it's sometimes quite some conceptual Foley, which I like to do, and then getting the material, the dialogue edit and the sounds from the sound editor, and then I add my kind of more sound design elements, which sometimes cross over with the music, get the music of the composer, and then what I like to do is assemble everything in my studio before the mix starts. Make sure it's all as I intend, that it's all there and it's all ready to be mixed, and then
it's around, I can see.
Yeah, exactly. So just to double check, not that you haven't. I communicate with the editors and the team quite, I'm very adamant about that. So the secret is in the planning and the communication, I feel, to get the good team. And then you get the director in and listen to their film before we step into the mixing theatre, because to be able to have this freedom to make changes before the mix, because in the mix, I'd like to be able to present to the mixer my intended, the sound for the film, and then you fine tune, and then the director just comes in and sees and hears the film in the environment, where it's will be kind of experienced by the audience. So it's all this process of, I would never, it's the worst thing you can do is step into the mix when you got, it's a very big place, it costs money, and you're under time pressure to step into a mix, and it's not all being there, as intended. So yeah, that's the process in my mind.
film jobs are rarely advertised, so you seem to have good communication skills, and obviously people like working with you. How did you expand on that to build up a network of people? And how long did it take?
Years and years. And because networks. I mean, the kind of the main piece of advice I give people who wants to work in film is network, for years, and don't stop networking, and even don't network just with film people, network with other creative and other creative environments and business environments, because you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know who the person you might standing talking to about something very random might have a family member who works in film, or have a best friend or something like that. So it's all about networks and using those people's networks, and that's a network. So network is the key, really, and maintaining those relationships, which it's also making friends. I mean, it's like finding people you like to work with, who you creatively kind of, and the chemistry works in a creative way. So you're excited by the same things, and you have share passions and stuff like that. So it is hard, but again and because it's all built on trust. I mean, if the film industry is very small, and you have to be good at what you do, and you have to be trusted with the job, because there's rarely scope for things to go terribly wrong. So you have to be good at it, and also communicate. So it's all about trust. That's the main thing.
England is very an old country, centralized in London. Does that also apply to the film industry? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's all mostly takes place in London. There is more regional now. Obviously, I'm based in Brighton. There's a small film community in Brighton, and I know in Cardiff they obviously do a lot of great TV and film there as well. And so it's kind of they're kind of trying to. I know the kind of regional film funding is trying to kind of grow at the moment, to kind of spread it out into. I mean, BBC moved to Manchester, so and now we all freelancers as well. We all used to all be sitting in London. That was, if you worked with film, you had to live and work in London. Now, since the financial crisis, it's changed a lot. So now we're mostly all freelancers, and trying to find a cheaper way to work, and we can sit more spread out, and then go into London and meet and finish their films. So it has become more virtual networks. You have a limited company, but you can draw in other people.
Yes. So I can expand. Exactly. So a subcontract for every project. That's how I work, really. So depending on to be able to go out and employ freelancers and bigger for the project, and then go back when it's quieter time to track that it's just me, really. So having the freedom to do that is great.
And I suppose it's important to keep the overheads low. Yeah. The costs, running costs of the business. Yeah, and also the nature of the film industry is that you never know what your next, when your next project is going to start. Even if they say, even if they, with the greatest, intentions, saying, this is the schedule, we're hoping to lock here, that rarely sticks to the dates. So you have to be flexible with things. So it's a tricky thing. Can you tell us in which areas of the film business you work? I mean, there's feature film, documentary, even advertising.
Yeah. No, I work in all of that kind of aspects, really. Mostly feature films, but there's obviously I do advertising as well. Promos like that, and short films, and documentary as well. So I'm kind of involved with all of them.
And each one has different challenges.
Yes.
Can you
for sure.
maybe mention one or two? For example, advertising, I suppose, is quite difficult sometimes because it's so short.
It is very short, but sometimes I do it's funny because sometimes I get more time with the director for an piece of 30-second advertising than with a director on a documentary or feature film because it's a quick turnaround. But it's the great thing about advertising because it's really usually a very, very quick turnaround. You have to go in, boom, boom, boom. So it's very you got the momentum, and also you get time with the director because it has to be it's just got to be kind of good, kind of quite quickly straight away. So that's quite nice like that, and it has to be quite punchy and sometimes very stylized as well, which is great fun. And then that's advertising, and then documentary is it's very different in the nature of documentary. Like, it's been shot, there's only one take of everything, and what the director decides to keep in the film is what you have to work with. So you're trying to, and also recreate those. If it's been shot with a little microphone on the camera, it only really gets the dialogue. So you have to obviously build everything. Sometimes reconstruct the whole kind of soundtrack for it, environmentally, realistically as well.
Yeah. So the purists probably I don't know if they do. How should I put this? Do you find in documentary film there's still this authentic movement around where they say, oh, you can't manipulate in the studio?
Yeah, but it's the balance getting. Yeah, we kind of talked about the directors quite a bit, but it's the kind of balance of telling the story, which is intriguing, and staying in reality, and those things sometimes have to overlap. So, but it's for the sake of the storytelling, really. And you don't want to, it's not like. It is an interesting. It's a big subject, but yeah.
And feature film, in my view, has become more documentary almost, because they use much more environmental sounds and less music.
Yes.
To create emotion.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is great.
How do you see the relationship between music and atmospheres, for example? Any sound can create emotion.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if, for example, I've thought about, a few years ago, I had a music score, and then I looked at, had that in mind, and then I looked at my track lay, and they have a lot of similarities, music and the way we kind of create sound, a soundtrack for a film. It's layers and different voices and the dynamics and scaling back things and then putting back in and louder. And so it's incredibly musical, although sometimes we don't really think of it as music. So, but then again, the subtle, the way you can play with emotions using sound only, and sometimes directors prefer a scene which they've been cutting with music and they feel like, oh, it's too on the nose, it's too pushing telling the audience what to feel too much. And then sometimes it's interesting to be able to try and not recreate that kind of strong emotions, but playing with tension and release, within sound. You can do so much. I kind of like to look at atmospheric sounds, or just the atmosphere as a kind of scoring it. You can have the same location. A film goes back to the same location maybe a few times, a few scenes in a film, and when you cut back to that scene, you got sound. You've layered up all the sounds for that environment, but then there's some elements in there which you can play with, like there's like less birds, more silence, but still having the elements in there that makes us recognize like the sonic photograph of the place, but to change a few things that are subtle, that play on the audience's minds, for sure, without really noticing. That's the interesting thing. You can actually lull them into believing something, and it's all fine, and then there's something in there which you can't really identify. That's what I find the most interesting. So yeah, and also obviously drones, and sometimes you can manipulate something very something's got a musical quality to it, and then make it morph into something more or less musical. And rhythm. Rhythm is a big thing. Yeah. So yeah, it's no limit really.
Which software do you use? Is it Pro Tools?
Yeah, Pro Tools.
That seems to be the industry standard.
Yeah. But I started, obviously, when I worked for Paul, he likes to work with Nuendo a lot. Steinberg, who makes Cubase, they also make Nuendo. Nuendo is it's a great editing platform, and it's kind of designed for film sound as well, with post-production in mind. So very similar to Pro Tools, but some slightly different when it comes to the kind of use experience with it. So I use both really, depending on the project.
Good.
Yeah, that's it.
I think so.
Oh, yeah, great.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Good.
Thank you.